Okay, let's go. We started the Mishnah yesterday on Lamed Tes Amud Aleph. We finished the Mishnah. Now let's go further into the Gemara. We're talking about which products are good for marar. So the Gemara is going to have a whole list. Some of them are going to know what they are. Some of them we're not going to know what they are. Let's jump in. So chazeres chasa. Chazeres is chasa. Chasa is lettuce. Okay, lettuce is the first thing that's listed. We're on Lamed Tes Amud Aleph right after the Mishnah. Okay, so chazeres is the first thing listed. Both what? 39a. Chazer is the first thing listed in the Mishnah and the first thing in the Bryce over here. We'll come back to why it's listed first. We'll come back to that. But again, the Bryce over here defines. The Gemara now is defining all the different things that were listed in the Mishnah. It's not going to be so helpful to us because it's going to use these Aramaic words. We don't know all these words. But again, the Mishnah said chazeres. What is chazeres? It's chasa, which means lettuce. Olshin, hindave. Olshin, which is the second one mentioned in the Mishnah, are endives. Okay, tamcha, what are tamcha? Amar Rabba Brachana, tamachta shema. Okay, it's tamachta, which is horseradish. Chavina, Amar of Shimon ben Lakish, atvasa didikla, it's the vine of the palm tree. Okay, people use the vine of the palm tree. Uvemarar and the mirirsa. Mirirsa is basically any bitter herb is going to be included. Okay, all those things are good for marar. Tani bar kapara, Eli rakos, shadam yotze behen yudeh chavasa b'pesach. These, now we have a brisa taught by bar kapara. These are the vegetables which a person could use for marar. Be'ulshin, uvitamcha, right? Those we identified above. Becharchalin. These are this herb, whatever it is actually the Rishonim don't help us. They don't define this. Bechar chavinin. Okay, that was one of those that we mentioned before. V'chazarin. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Af ulshe sada v'ulshe gina v'chazeres. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda comes along and says wild ulshin, garden ulshin, and chazeres. The Gemara says, the Gemara asks, ulshe gina v'chazeres. Okay, why does Rabbi Yehuda mention garden, ulshin, and chazeres? Those are Tani le Reisha. In the first Tana already mentioned ulshin and chazeres. What's he doing by mentioning the two things which are mentioned already? So Hachik Amar, this Rabbi Yehuda means to say, Af ulshe sada ki ulshe gina v'chazeres. What he comes to say is that that wild ulshin are just like garden ulshin. Again, so basically what he's coming to tell us is that these ulshin, even if it has a quality, meaning it doesn't matter what type of ulshin is a type of species. It doesn't matter if it's the garden type, if it's the wild type. Either one of those are going to be okay. Okay. Rabbi Meir Omer, the Brisa continues. Af asvas v'tura umar yirar. Okay, so these are three different herbs. Again, the Rishonim don't know exactly what they are, but these are three different herbs which Meir says are also acceptable. Amar le Rav Yossi, asvas Vitura echadhu. He says asvas and tura are not two separate things, but rather they are one thing. Umar zehu yiror. And although Rameir said mar yiror, he says mar is actually the same thing as yiror. So where Rameir had a list of 4, he's saying that list is actually 2. Okay, again, we're just listing all these different types of herbs that are going to be okay to use. Tani devei Shmuel, elu yirako shadam yotze behen yidei chavas Pesach. These are the vegetables with which a person could fulfill his obligation on Pesach. Bichazeres. Okay, that was what's it called? That was lettuce. Okay, be'ulshin uvetamcha uvecharbinin uvecharginin. Charginin is oregano. Uvehardofnin, and that is oleander. Rabbi Yehuda Omer av chazeres yulin v'chazeres galin keyotze behen. Okay, so once again, Rabbi Yehuda comes along and says, even though there's different types of this type of herb, there's the wild, there's this type, there's that type, all those are allowed to be used. Okay, Rabbi Eli, Amar Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, Af Arkablim, even like thick ivy, okay, that goes around a tree. V'chazarti al kol tamidav, okay, so he says, Rabbi Eli says, I went around to all the disciples of Rabbi Eliezer, and I was looking for someone to support what I heard from him. In other words, Rabbi Eli is a student of Rabbi Eliezer, and he heard something from his teacher, and he said it. But then he said, then I went to all his other students and to make sure that I actually heard him correctly, right? In other words, we're all in the same room. Did we actually hear it correctly? So he went back, and he didn't find anyone who actually could support what he said. When he came in front of Eliezer ben Yaakov, he agreed with me. Okay, so basically he's saying that yes, I'm right, that this is what our teacher Rabbi Eliezer actually said. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, kol sheyesh lo saraf, any vegetable that has sap is suitable. Interestingly, they quote in the footnotes over here that the Greek word for lettuce actually comes from the word lactate, like milk. And basically lettuce, when you cut it, you cut the stalk, right, a little bit of white stuff comes out. And so that's what he's saying. Anything which has a little bit of sap is okay. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer, kol shepana machsifin, anything which has pale green. Acherim omrim, kol yarak mar yesh lo sraf ufana machsifim. All bitter vegetables have sap and pale appearances. Acherim seems to be arguing and saying it's not one or the other, but rather it has to have both sap and it has to have and it has to be pale green in order to be kosher for marar. Rabbi Yochanan comes along and seems to support Acherim. He says, "Midivrei kula nilmad yarak mar yesh lo sar fana machzifin." That a bitter herb has sap and its appearance is pale green. And basically, what he's saying is that the halacha is like Acherim, and Amar Rav Huna halacha ki Acherim. Rav Huna comes along and also says the halacha is like Acherim, that again it has to have sap and it has to be pale green. At least its peel has to be pale green. Ravina Ashkel Rav Acha Breja Rava Dahava Mahadar Amrirsa. Okay, this story is like something which could be written nowadays. Okay, why? Ravina found Rav Acha who was looking for Marirsa, which is like a bitter herb for marar, right? He wanted to have a very bitter herb for marar, right? Many people go ahead and they say, yeah.
The horseradish is in pale green.
The peel has like a it's just white or it's
It's sort of like yellow.
Well, it could be brown after before you peel it.
Well, it has dirt on it.
I hear. Okay.
It's surely not green.
Definitely not green. But it's not like a palish yellow green.
How do you define it? Well, green.
I don't know. It's a spectrum of colors. Yeah, it's not like green like Kermit the Frog green, but it's it's a spectrum. I believe it's like a shade. I believe.
If you're using genetic engineering.
Okay. Okay. So basically, he found him running around looking for the most bitter herbs possible, right? Pesach night, everyone's like, I want the most bitter herbs, right? That's what everyone says. Amrle, my datech. Why are you doing this? Dimaririn tvei, because it's so bitter. V'chazeres tan. He says, look at our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was very thoughtful when he wrote our Mishnah. When he wrote our Mishnah, he made a whole list of different things. And what does he list first? Chazeres. Chazeres is lettuce. He lists lettuce first. So what does that teach us? V'tana dvei Shmuel chazeres. And also when the Academy of Shmuel listed everything, the first thing he listed was lettuce. V'amar Rav Oshia, and Rav Oshia goes further and says mitzvah b'chazeres. That the ideal mitzvah is actually to have lettuce. Okay? V'amar Rava, my chazeres chasa. And Rava told us what is chazeres? It is lettuce. My chasa, why is it called chasa? So now, why do we have lettuce? Why is lettuce? Okay, so basically he's telling him, why are you bothering running after the most bitter herbs? Lettuce is the most ideal thing, and lettuce was in abundance, just like nowadays. You can easily get lettuce. Why are you running after the bitter herbs? Chazeres is the most ideal. Now he wants to understand, why is it called, he's asking why is it called chasa, but really what he's asking is, why is that the most ideal form of marar? Dechas rachmana. So he asks, my chasa, why is it called chasa? Dechas rachmana ilavan. The word lettuce comes the word chas, which means to have pity. That it reminds us the fact that Hashem had pity on us. He saw our suffering and he had pity. That's why it's called chasa, and that's why he says it is the most ideal form of marar, because it reminds us not just of our suffering, but the fact that Hashem saw our suffering and had compassion on us. Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Rav Yochanan, Lama nimshlu mitzrim kimar. Why are the Egyptians compared to marar? Lama lecha ma marar zeshit chilaso rach v'safo kasha. Just as marar is beginning it's soft, but its end is hard. Af mitzrim tchilasan raka v'sofan kasha. So to the Egyptians, the beginning was soft and the end they were harsh. Okay, so what he's referring to is as follows. He's referring to the fact that lettuce, right? When you take a leaf of lettuce, the end of it, right? It's soft, right? But then as you bite, it gets hard, right? Soft on the ends, and then it gets hard as you get closer. He says that is really the story of what took place in Mitzrayim, right? If you read the Midrashim, it's just a few psukim in the Torah, but you read the Midrashim, what happened? Paro goes ahead and says, everyone come and work, all the Jews come and work a little bit, and then they start, putting taxes on them, and they demonize them, etc., step after step after step, until they're complete slaves, being persecuted and being murdered by the Mitzrayim, right? Which is, by the way, the course of history, as the Mefarshim points out, this is always the way it happens. No one wakes up one day and says, hey, put the Jews in a concentration camp. What they do is they, put difficult, demonize, they demonize, they make them suffer over and over and over, like different step. It comes from soft, it's no big deal, it's tolerable, until it becomes very, very hard. Lettuce represents that, because whereas, a horseradish is just one hard thing, lettuce reminds us of the progression, the regression from soft to hard, the soft end, and then it gets to a hard piece, and that's why lettuce, both for the fact that it's called chasa, which means Hashem had compassion on us, as well as the fact that it reminds us of the sequence of events leading up to the bitterness that took place in Mitzrayim. That's why lettuce is most ideal. So, to the little kid at your Seder, who is running after, myself sometimes, who wants to have the bitterest, most, harsh, whatever, the lettuce is not only okay, lettuce is ideal, according to the Gemara. Okay, so many people, what they do is they mix together, they put a little bit of hard, spicy, horseradish together with the lettuce, but the lettuce is certainly something which is ideal to have for marar based on these two reasons. Okay. Amar le Rav Rechumi Labaya Mimai Dahai Mar Min Yaraku. How do you know? Now we want to understand. Our entire premise of our last discussion was that it is a vegetable. Who says it's a vegetable? Ema Marirsa Dechufya. Again, the Torah said a matzos umrorim yochlu. It just says marar. Marar actually can mean a whole bunch of different things. First of all, maybe it's the marar marirsa, which means the gall, the juice from the liver from a kufya fish. Okay, in other words, it's something else which is called mar, which is the juice that comes from the liver of a fish. Who says it's a vegetable? So Mar says dumi de matzah, because matzos umurarim yachlu. It juxtaposes matzah and mar. Ma matzah gdule karka, just like we know matzah grows from the earth. Af mar gdule karka, so too mar is something which grows from the earth. Okay, ask the Gemara ve'ema hirduf. Maybe it's a herb from a bitter tree called hirduf. Okay, dumya de matzah. So Gemara answers again. It's like matzah. Ma matzah means zeraim. Just like matzah is herbage, it's something from the ground, not from a tree. Afmar means zeraim. So too mar is something from the ground. Ask the Gemara further. Ve'ema harzifu. Maybe it's harzifu. Harzifu is a plant which apparently is poisonous for animals, not poisonous for people, but not something which people typically eat. So the Gemara answers dumya de matzah. It has to be similar to matzah. Ma matzah shenikachas bekesef meiser. Just like matzah is something which is bought with meiser sheni money. It has to be something which is like a food which is normally eaten. Afmar shenikach bekesef meiser. So to mar refers to something that is bought with meiser sheni money, as opposed to harzifu, which is not bought with meiser sheni money because it's not typical food. Amalei Rabba Baruch Chan Labaya Ema Marachad. Okay. Maybe there's only one type of vegetable, right? How do you know? Right? We just had this whole long list. Whether you hold like the opinion that it has to be green and it has to have sap, or whether you hold the opinion that has all these different things. Bottom line is, no one said it's just one vegetable, right? Everyone said it's a whole bunch of things. Who says it's why? What gave you the right to assume it's so many different things? My answer is mirorim ksiv. It doesn't say amatza umarar. It says amatza umrorim yochlu. It says in the plural. So clearly it's more than one thing. Ve'ema mirorim trei. Ask the Gemara, okay, mirorim just two. How do you know it's so many? Dumi de matzah. The Gemara answers again. It's like matzah. Ma matzah minim harbe. Just like matzah is made from many species, right? We saw earlier, you could have oat, you could have spelt, you could have, whatever, all the different types of matzah. Mar minim harbe, so too matzah, so too mar could be from many species. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We're going to get into a different discussion, God willing, tomorrow. Have a great day.